Hello viewer, the Nameless Scholar here, and welcome back to more Age of Sigmar lore. In this video, I will be talking about the Maggotkin of Nurgle. Before I begin, if you want more Age of Sigmar lore videos, check out my channel and other videos. I would be grateful if you liked, commented and subscribed, as well as shared this video. My purpose is to prove that Age of Sigmar is more than just the game that killed Warhammer Fantasy. The Maggotkin of Nurgle are plague-ridden hordes of shambling mortals and demons that might as well be zombies, each of them a walking vector of disease, their bodies all but immune to pain, and they worship Nurgle, the chaos god of disease, decay, pestilence, and stagnation, who is most commonly depicted as a hugely bloated and putrescent abomination crowned by a pair of rotting antlers. Funnily enough, we know more of Nurgle's appearance than the other gods, because Nurgle's demons oftentimes resemble him in appearance as well as demeanor. This constancy is due to Nurgle also symbolizing entropy and stagnation, which is why he is at odds with Tzeentch, the chaos god of change, luck, and fate. Nurgle symbolizes a corruption of the cycle of life and death, as we can see from his mark. 3 circles that show decay, death, and rebirth. Due to this, one would not be scorned to think that the Lord of Plagues has a morose nature. His followers claim the opposite. To them, Grandfather Nurgle is a paternal lord who cherishes all those who enter into his service. He grants them meaning and happiness in the miserable existence they call a life. Nurgle essentially offers them a poison chalice. Their bodies bloat and putrefy, and they become stronger. They know all too well that hope is the first step on the road to disappointment. So they revel in decay and stagnation. So they stay the same under the eye of their loving grandfather. That the universe is an empty void that does not care. But Grandfather Nurgle does, and he offers contentment in the absurdity of it all. Because of this, some Maggotkin are jolly and gregarious, others are grim and carry an ever-present wariness. Reminder that in theory, to fall to Nurgle, one could indeed try to pull a
loathsome dung-eater.
During the Age of Myth, Nurgle showed patience. He saw farmers praying for a bountiful harvest and found that their neighbors were having a famine. Plague spread, and in his obsessiveness he could not wait any longer. Tears in reality opened, and his demons poured forth from them. This is something that is very important. Nurgle is very obsessive by nature, and his obsession was Ghyrin, the realm of life, for multiple reasons. Firstly, due to its nature, he wanted to turn the realm of life into a mirror of his own realm, an ever-decaying garden filled with rivers of pus, mountains that look like scabs, and rotting trees. The Plague Lord had claimed the realm of life for himself. The tide of disease crushed everyone who didn't flee. They either lived and died by the sword, or lived long enough to see themselves worship the grandfather. Even though he had won, it was not enough. He wanted something else. Someone else. Alarielle, the Everqueen. Why exactly he wanted her, no one truly knows. All that is known by his followers was that whomever found the Everqueen would be his favorite champion for all time, and that the realm of life would never truly heal without her. However, if you ask Alarielle as to why the Plague Lord would want to do something like that to her, is a death sentence. This is one of the few times she will enter into a raging frenzy. Alarielle fed on the despair of her Sylvaneth children, and when Sigmar's Tempest broke, her secret location was revealed to the Maggotkin. They attacked an all-out assault on Aetherwild, led by Torglug the Despised. Just as they found the cocoon of Alarielle, she emerged from it in her war form, and she slaughtered all of the forces of the Plague Father in righteous fury. To add insult to injury, Celestant Prime took what remained virtuous about Torglok's soul to the Anvil of Apotheosis and reforged him into Tornus the Redeemed. This man, once a worshipper of the Everqueen, was purified and cleansed of chaos corruption, never to be corrupted again. His obsession was what led to Nurgle's downfall at Gyren. Not only was Gyren the other realm where Sigmar's Tempest broke the strongest, but Nurgle's rage was so intense that from the Brass Citadel, his brother Khorne reared his head, wondering why he was so angry. Because Nurgle hates only one thing and one thing alone: apostates, those who had received his gifts and rejected them. After this, he had realized that he was being selfish by focusing on Gyren alone, and that he had to spread his gifts, and I use the word gift very loosely, to the other mortal realms as well. His Maggotkin needed little encouragement. It is not only apostates that Nurgle and his followers hate, it is also the forces of death, for they believe it is them whom rightfully has dominion over it. The Plague Legions besieged Nagashizar alongside the other armies of Chaos, but cooperation was never their strong suit as they quickly devolved into infighting. However, the decision to besiege the Great Necromancer's capital proved to be the right call, as Nagash's ritual went awry. With the Necroquake, the Plague Kingdoms of the Maggotkin stood, but not all. For example, Hangfast, which was located at Chamon, was ripped asunder by an approaching storm of screaming geists. The peak of the war between the forces of death and the Maggotkin of Nurgle was during the War of the Mortarchs. On Nvidia, Manfred von Karstein essentially tried to turn the realm gate he entered from into a conduit for the Shyish Nadir. Although the Plague host succeeded in repelling the Legion of Night, the Bleeding Gate was permanently damaged. The Rite of Life followed afterwards, and it was agonizing to the followers of Nurgle, but even then it proved new things to corrupt. They put the Dawnbringer Crusaders in their place and showed them the futility of their struggle. As you probably understood by now, the Maggotkin of Nurgle is most prominent in Gyren, the Realm of Life. To achieve these, they defile souls, poison rivers, befoul crops, and twist the cycle of life and death into a cycle of decay, death, and rebirth. The territories of the Maggotkin are located at the edges of the Everspring Swamp, pushed back by the Sigmarites and the Sylvaneth. The most infamous Plague Kingdom, Plaguespire, is located on the continent of Invidia, located to the northeast, and other Plague Kingdoms dot around and some within the Everspring Swamp itself. Now, the armies of the Maggotkin are classified in two main parts, the first being the Plague Legions, the second being the Rotbringer Contagiums. The Plague Legions are the armies that comprise of the demons of Nurgle, which are commanded by the greater demons of Nurgle, which has a retinue. Meanwhile, the Contagiums are the armies of mortal followers of Nurgle. The Contagiums comprise of three different throngs called Cysts, typically led by a Lord of Plagues, a Lord of Blights, and a Lord of Afflictions. The Contagiums are also known to work with or enslave slaves to darkness that worship Nurgle, alongside Clan Pestilence of Skaven. Now we get to the subfactions. Firstly, the Plague Legions. The Munificent Wanderers, according to certain scholars of Infernal lore, are the embodiment of Nurgle believing that his gifts are truly benevolent, and that he cannot or will not grasp the vast harm they cause. This host is nomadic to the point of obsession. They have no claim or need for territory. They are an ever-ongoing, realm-spanning crusade of disease with the sole purpose of spreading the gifts of the Rotfather. Their leader is a great unclean one by the name of Thornballhawks the Giving. Those who have seen him from a distance and lived to tell the tale has been described as a cheerful and polite demon thing, even as he reaps his enemies. Because of their exploits, they are the favorite of Nurgle, and are tasked with spreading prime maladies that are also known to cooperate with the Skaven of Clan Pestilence. In battle, they are a tide of disease in more ways than one, as hordes of plague bearers hurl themselves near impervious to damage. Then there is the Befouling Host, whom are the defenders of Nurgle's realm. They tend and defend the Garden. They also join the campaigns of Horticulus Slimax. While Slimax's Beasts of Nurgle are an enthusiastic vanguard, the Befouling Host is
The loathsome Dung Eater.
drowning the enemies with magic originating from the Father of Plagues, turning them into toxic slime and plagued rotted trees. Then there is the Droning Guard, which one can hear them as thrumming of 100 fly wings, the plague drones leading the charge and gaining air superiority. They particularly carry the Soullock Shivers contagion. This disease in particular agonizingly petrifies the victim into stone statues. They are led by Septuclus, a being whose form changes from a mass of heaving slime or a ghoulish entity of animated bone. Their symbol, the Plague Fly, was given to them by Nurgle himself. Then there are the contagions, starting with the biggest one, the Blessed Sons. This is a brotherhood of disease unparalleled in numbers and martial prowess. Although they originate from the Jade Kingdoms of Gyren, they also have territory in the Great Parch of Akshi, and they are rather bloodthirsty compared to the other armies of Nurgle. Then there is the Drowned Men. They are the scourge of the seas in all of the mortal realms, formed from fleets of sailors who were struck down with malaise in the sea and accepted the gift of Nurgle. Their most common way to recruit is to force drink their victims with dirty seawater until they either die or rise again as Nurgle's chosen. They are deceptively fast for what are essentially a bunch of bloated corpses. They are also the scourge of the airs, as they use a lot of Pusgoyle Blight Lords. As of the War of the Beast, they were at Chamon, fighting the air fleets of the Caradron overlords. Then there are the Filthbringers, whom are,
Loathsome Dung Eater.
quite literally, they seek plague lore and they are masters of Nurgle's pestilent magic. However, they don't use any normal diseases, no. They seek to use diseases that rot someone from within, defile one's soul, and they serve the blighted Septagon, which is a septumvirate of plague mages. 6 of them are said to be centuries old, and some even claim that they are siblings. The 7th is a special position for the champion of Festus. They have fought for the Leech Lord so much that they are his private army all but in name, and of the Arrow of the Beast are stationed in Gur, fighting off the megafauna and defiling the flora. Now we move on to the units, starting with the demons. The greater demons are the Great Unclean Ones. They look similar to Grandfather Nurgle himself, a putrid fat rotting monster with antlers. Some of the cultists of Nurgle even call them father, while Nurgle himself is the grandfather. These giant bloated abominations are the leaders of the Plague Legions. These entities are not easy to summon, as only the strongest of diseases can get their attention. They have an entourage of beasts, Nurglings, and rancid retinue. These giant balls of rotting flesh are jovial and giddy, but they are also a walking contradiction, as they are the embodiment of misery, as their rancid smell is poisonous enough to kill. They embody diseases of the Plague Father as well as his fixations. Should their ambitions be challenged, they will enter into a fit of rage with their giant rusting blade and ring their bell, which summons other demons of Nurgle to their presence. Then there are the exalted lesser demons of Nurgle, starting with Poxbringers, which are the champion plague bearers which act as lieutenants for the Great Unclean Ones, as well as captains to Talibans. Their plague swords dipped in unholy slime, which they use to attack and hack apart enemies, as well as casting pestilence spells. When a mortal follower of Nurgle seeks advice from a shard of the Grandfather, it is usually a Poxbringer that answers the call. Then there are the sloppity Bile Pipers, which are musician plague bearers that are cursed with hysteria and dance merrily. They have immense energy, are quippy and demented. They cheer the other demons and make the other plague bearers fight harder. However, this type of plague bearer is ultimately doomed, for their murrain will one day enter into remission and they stop laughing. Then they are transfigured into an instrument for the next Bile Piper to use. Then there are the Spoilpox Scriveners, which are the opposite of the Bile Pipers, with their grim demeanor. They essentially hold Nurgle's own Book of Grudges, writing down any who shirked their duties. They are made to work in tandem with the sloppity Bile Pipers. The Scriveners demand the Plague Bearers to call out their count, or they will be infected with the chortling murrain to become a Bile Piper. Now, onto the Foot Soldiers and Beasts. Plague Bearers are unlike most Chaos Demons. Plague Bearers are the souls of mortals who died in despair and accepting of Nurgle's magnum opus, Nurgle's Rot. This disease rots both the body and spirit. However, it is possible to resist the soul corruption. Those that do just happen to blow up like a boomer from Left 4 Dead. Those who give in to despair and die are taken to the realm of Nurgle to be remade into a plague bearer. They have a single bloodshot eye, belly full of corpse gas, if their entrails aren't hanging from it at least, and have waxy, resilient flesh. Their plague swords, which are bound to them, look like ancient rusted blades, but are also an essence of Nurgle. One scratch from this blade is enough to kill a man in an excruciatingly drawn-out way. Plague bearers are also obsessive. They always count their kills, the diseases they spread, and the victims they converted. Then there are the Beasts of Nurgle, which resemble huge slugs. They lollop across the ground at surprising speeds, and they have an aura of entropy around them which can make anything living die of accelerated aging. These things are happy giant demons and want new friends all the time. The Plague Bearers can handle its acid that it spreads, but the mortals melt alive the moment this thing charges at something. It also cannot differentiate between screams of joy and agony. Then there are the Plague Drones, which are formed when a beast of Nurgle is banished back into the realm of chaos one too many times and grows resentful. Flies form a living chrysalis around it, which transforms it into a rot fly. They have the sole purpose of hunting down those who have spurned them when they were happy innocent demon slugs, while Plague Bearers ride them. It uses its chitinous limbs to impale enemies, its mouth thingies to bite, and they are large enough to swallow man whole, which once they do, the souls of their victims suffer forevermore in their stomach. Then there are Nurglings, which are essentially a swarm of little versions of Great Unclean Ones. When it's just one, it is small enough to be kicked around, but when they are multiple, yeah, that's where the problem starts. When they have a tide of these things charging at you, nibbling at your flesh, these things come from the innards of Great Unclean Ones, by the way. Those were the demons. Now we move on to the mortals, starting with the Lord of Afflictions. They are the embodiment of the epidemic. They sometimes ride rotflies to battle, with the sole purpose of spreading the gifts of their grandfather as much as possible. They make Faustian deals with Nurgle to gain access to Incubatches, a nightmarish totem that produces foul plague sorcery. Then there are the Lord of Blights, which are the champions of the Contagiums. They wield a hammer and a great shield, with the symbol of the Holy Fly. These corpse orchards crushes limbs and turns flesh into pulp to turn into gallow trees, where they hang the corpses of their victims. Then they fill the skulls of their enemies with fluids, originating from great unclean ones to use as bombs. These effluvia spreading gifts are used sparingly, and wasting them is considered blasphemy. Then there are the Harbingers of Decay, which are a sign of ill omen. They can use divination only via diseased entrails and patterns of rashes. Their weapon inflicts a malaise known as Shudderblight. This disease makes one self-doubt and get tormented by every failing, and eventually breaks the will. Then, there are the Rotbringer Sorcerers, which can manifest magic that rapidly desiccates flesh or melts them via acidic slime. Their origins can vary, from shamans that already worship Nurgle, to an unfortunate scholar whom read the wrong lore of magic, to a fearful sorcerer whom sought the embrace in the grandfather's arms to be protected from Nagash. They can range from advisors to commanders of their own contagions. One of the things they love to do is pull a
The loathsome dung eater.
to defile everything. So imagine a slime-dripping purple son of Shyish or a rusted Aether Void pendulum conjured by them. Then there are the Foot Soldiers, which are weirdly called Putrid Blight Kings. These warriors are filled with unholy power and pus. They are the stuff of nightmares with an intense stench and exposed innards. They are all but inured to pain and fatigue. Unlike the Blood Warriors of Khorne or Slaanesh's Myrmidesh, the Blight Kings need not to be of a martial background. More often than not, they are peasants, farmers, and such which were struck down by disease or famine. In battle, they wield farmers' tools like scythes, cleavers, and blades, albeit all of them are rusted, but that hardly matters when said weapons are plagued. So they function similarly to the plague swords of plague bearers. The demeanors of these humanoid abominations range from jovial to grim. The only thing all of them have in common is that they are all insane, and their minds have been twisted by the Plague God. Finally, there are the Puscoil Blight Lords, which are Blight Kings that have mounted rotflies. These aerial cavalry have a bond with the angry demons, and it takes much longer for said demons to demanifest. These are the line breakers of a contagium. To become a Puscoil Blight Lord, one must undergo the rite known as the Feast of Maggots. The rite goes like this. Atop a corrupted ley line, one must swear an oath of devotion. They allow a slatter maggot to drop into an open sore, and the larvae feasts on his flesh until it multiplies to 2, and the process repeats to the powers of 2. 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, 8 becomes 16, so on and so on. And they have 7 days to infect the worshippers of Nurgle's sibling gods. Most fail and are eaten alive by the time they can do it, cast off as unworthy detritus. They are barred from entering the realm of Nurgle. But the few who do, however, get to ride a Rotfly, under the condition that they do not interfere with the Demon Mount's quest of petty revenge. Well, anyways, guys, this is going to be it for this video. Wow. Compared to the Luminef video, this was rather short. I'm the Nameless Scholar. And,
The loathsome dung eater.
yeah, that's my only punchline for this video.